it's just amazing, these connections, these little trips, or these little things that someone's playing on me or something, these little cosmic jokes or something. They're not, they're just, but they're just so full of energy, so full of life. They're just like unbelievable. It's like, in one sense, I don't believe it, but at the same time, it's like, okay, why isn't this real? Why can't this not be real? Like, this is the way it works.
They don't know how scary it is starting a painting. I know certainly as a teenager, I was very confused about things. It was really hard for me to be here. Everything kind of really felt alien and foreign, and I didn't understand a lot of things going on around me and in the world. Somewhat very difficult for me to fit in. Around 14, I started drawing a lot more. And there was it was drawing earlier before that as well. And there was, it's what I kind of got recognized for. It's what I got, I guess, attention for. When I drew, it's like, oh wow, is that ever good? So of course, that's what you're going to continue doing, are those things that you get this feedback with. So this is my first original drawing, which is, I guess, totally my idea and makeup. I guess that gets into a certain state of mind that I was in at the time, being 15 years old here. But it's interesting that through the years, there's a lot of imagery, subject matter, that motifs, objects that seem to come into play into my work a lot. Hands and eyes, spheres, and this psychedelia kind of motif, roads and journeys. But there's, I think, a lot more, life in my work now than there was then. And so the breath drawings are these wispy, smoky, very flame-like doodles that have been coming up for years and years and years. And through the years, they've actually evolved, which is really interesting. They kind of keep changing over time. I wonder in these drawings, what is this interaction between these figures, between these people? Because there's definitely interactions, dialogue, communication that is happening.
Various painting shirts. I'll have to finish this one day. Don't know where it's at.
So again, these photographs are from, I guess a couple of years ago, that I thought would make a good reference model for this painting. So I had some various angles that I took, and it just sort of creates this larger perspective. Maybe this is God's door or something. This hand. I don't know exactly how it's going to turn out. It could end up being very abstract or very, very real, very human. I'm not sure. And that's, the nature of the paintings. I just start somewhere and sort of see where it goes.
There's my earth.
I don't know how scary it is starting a painting. Maybe you do.
My work isn't as, simple. It's not one or another. It's not sci-fi, but it is. It's not surreal, but it is. It's not metaphysical, but it is, or new age, but it is. One area always sees my work as another area. It's like I'm always in this I fall, within the cracks of all these different genres, because your work is too commercial, and it's like, well, it's not commercial, I can't sell it to these other places, so what do you do? It's like another crack.
In my work, I want people to be able to walk away with a sense of an otherness that maybe perhaps they haven't had before, a sense of looking at the world a little bit differently, to look around them a little bit differently than they might have before, to look at an object and sort of seeing the other side of it, to see a relationship with all these things that we have around us, and these connections that there are amongst ourselves as human beings, to the greater world, other living beings, animals, and figures. puzzle pieces and puzzles itself have played a large part of my work, as each puzzle piece is different from one another, seemingly the same. If anyone's ever put together a 1,000-piece puzzle, each piece looks the same, but they're all very, very different, as you would know when you start to put this puzzle together. Just as human beings are also different from one another, we are also very, very, very much the same and very much part of the same larger picture. I really want us as a species, the human being, to evolve, to be more, to see more, to be this, this super being of sorts, if not of strength, then of heart at least, and of mind, to have some kind of common sense in how we should all be living together. Yeah, that sounds corny, but there's this evolution of being that I feel is within us, and I hope that my work shows people a little bit of that. It's certainly showing me a little bit more of that. It's interesting because of the huge psychedelia influence in my work. I was born in the 60s, but I grew up in the 60s, but I didn't experience the 60s in the same way that all the hippies did. I was just a child, but certainly there's that background influence. So it's in there in my work, but because it is, and there's a lot of people that think that I take a lot of drugs or something to create this work, but that's not the case at all.
Please, have a seat.
Thank you.
I would like you to tell me what you see in this picture.
Well, it's colorful. It's a neat picture.
Please, just tell me what you see.
There's a red house surrounded by green trees and grass, and there's a strange bird in the sky.
Thank you. You may leave. Please, have a seat.
Thank you.
Now, tell me what you see.
There's a lonely red house on this floating ground with bushes around it, a blue sky, and flying in the sky is, this may sound weird, but in the sky there's a battle axe.
It's really important for me as an artist to be careful of what I put out into the world. Like there's this huge responsibility that I feel that I have. Too often I'm very serious with the works that I do, and sometimes maybe too serious, and maybe that's where the balance of the novelty items come into play. There's a natural progression from creating the comics and making these little books to producing the novelty items such as the spherical visual chew gum and fun gum and the booklets and the Pollux, lollipops and Sergeant smoked cigarette butts. It's all in this kind of surreal aspect of turning something into something else, and finding, interesting and novel ways to package my art, to sell my artwork. Not everyone can afford a painting, not everyone can even afford expensive prints. So what else can I do aside from, say, trading cards? So I started to take these existing products and figuring out a form to put my artwork in there, such as the spherical gum stick.
It's like animation.
There's a lot of power in flip books. There's a lot of visual punch in creating this idea of motion with simple sheets of paper all stacked on top of one another. And I love this sort of ancient quality to the idea of motion pictures, because it's in your hands and you're flipping with your thumb. A lot of my flip books start with a line and almost end with a line, or start with a line that really stems from your thumb. There's one flip book I have called Power to Fuel the Sun, and it literally starts from your thumb. This line comes out and attacks or connects with this sphere that's just sitting there, and then that kind of explodes into this other form. A lot of my other flip books have this linear idea. It's this connecting point. It's almost like you're creating this yourself. It's not just me, but now the person that's flipping it. It's something that's sparking within their fingers. There's this fusion of your mind and your subconscious mind and your heart, and this feeling of the cosmic forces all kind of funneling through you, through your arm, through your fingertips, through the brush. There's this connection, this transformation, this bridge area that's in between there somewhere, where it's like alchemy, and you're transforming, these base metals, this base plastic, into something way more exciting. To make a living as an artist on your own, having to not just create the work, but to find places to sell it, to go out and walk on the streets, making phone calls. And during the 80s, I was in my 20s, and it's a very self-empowering kind of feeling that you have as a young man. You have this whole the whole world, your whole life ahead of you, and it was a little bit easier back then to do that because of the empowerment of being in your 20s and somewhat feeling cocky and all powerful, and you just go ahead and did things. And I find as I get a bit older that, you know, all I really want to do is paint and draw, and I take other jobs. I have gotten you know, illustration assignments, and I have sold my work in galleries, and you know, individual people will commission me to do paintings as well. But there's a lot of supplemented income as well, and it's just mainly because of that, a lot of time and effort that's needed away from creating work, and I just have this drive and ability to be making these things, and I just feel that that's really way more important than eating is, unfortunately, for me and my family. In a number of the comics that I have done, which deal a lot with metaphysical properties and the energy and the surrounding and inner forces, one of them that I was able to get done, called The Affirmation of Jimmy Brown, where there's this simple idea of the objects that we surround ourselves with, the stuff that we surround ourselves with, have this connection to us, and they all carry these energies that we can relate to. And the idea deals with holding this glass of water in your living room, in your living space, for a number of days, and you know, it's soaking up all of these energies. And you know, if you ever forget who you are, just drink this water, and it holds all these memories, these vibrations, because that's literally what all these things are. Even the space within the room that has carried yourself for all that time that you've been in that space, it soaks all that up, and it's like nourishment. It's, you know, it's such a strange feeling to see something from an idea, you know, just a conception of the mind, to this rough sketch on paper, and you know, it's certainly a lot of effort and work in working through the painting itself, but seeing it finished is certainly a joy. It's done. It's done.